He is the president of Henry Ford Hospital, West Bloomfield. There's just so many gadgets around here, Eric. I don't even know which way to go sometimes. I get confused.
Yeah, it sounds like you need more technology.
Yes, exactly. Well, you live in a world of advanced technology, so you kind of understand. Again, Eric Wallis, President, Henry Ford Hospital, West Bloomfield. Eric, let's just start with the good news today. The numbers continue to come down, and yesterday we got the lowest death number, and I think maybe even the lowest additional new cases of coronavirus in the state, if I'm correct. What are your thoughts?
No, absolutely. I think you point out the important part of that is that we're seeing fewer people pass away from COVID-19, and a lot of hard work and unfortunately, a lot of pain that folks and businesses have been dealing with have worked. They have really kind of flattened that curve out so that we have the resources to deal with folks who are sick and need to come in. And we've learned a lot about the virus over the last couple of months and how to treat patients and how to get them well and get them back out of the hospital.
One of the things that, and I don't want to create any controversy here, but one of the things that has been unfortunate, you're smiling. Don't worry. Don't worry. This is going to be an easy question. One of the things that has been a little bit more of a challenge, and I think we're realizing even more now, and you got to learn some of these things, right? We're realizing even more now in the nursing home settings that it's been very difficult mixing COVID-19 patients and non-COVID-19 patients, and it's been a problem in the nursing homes. Can you talk about what's been happening in the hospitals and why it's not been as much of a problem in the hospitals, or maybe it has and we're not aware of it?
No, I think, what you're talking about are two very different venues, and the advantage that we have here in the hospital is that we're used to dealing with really acute issues and acute disease. And I think for a hospital like West Bloomfield, we were always very fortunate that every one of our patient rooms is designed to be private. And so, we have the ability to have folks in a private space, close the door, and put some of those isolation protections in place. Every facility, even throughout the Henry Ford system, has had to deal with different challenges based on the physical layout and design of the building. And so from that standpoint, I feel extremely fortunate to be here at Henry Ford West Bloomfield because we are set up with all private rooms, and it makes it a little easier for us to isolate and manage folks.
So I appreciate your thoughts on that. And, we have to deal with what we have to deal with from a physical standpoint. But I'm sure in the hospital setting, too, you and your team and the healthcare industry as a whole, you've learned some things that have helped you deal with this crisis better as you got deeper into it. I mean, Don't you think? You want to talk about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, some of what you've seen is, we're blessed to be part of a large healthcare system that has, great ties and connections to experts all over the world. And so whether it's, Dr. Betty Chu and Dr. Steve Kalkanis, Wright Lassiter, Bob Riney, folks being in daily communication with the governor's office, with the CDC, John Hopkins, folks, we've been able to reach out and pick their brains and their expertise. And frankly, we've had folks from around the country that have called us to say, how are you guys dealing with this? Because you're right in the thick of it. So I do think that's one of the big advantages to being part of the Henry Ford healthcare system is that we've got these connections. We've got, folks that we can reach out to and brainstorm with. And frankly, you're even seeing us, kind of lead the way in some things like some of our clinical trials and studies that we're involved with to help figure out how do we keep, first responders safe with our WIP-19 study. Or whether it's looking at things like the use of remdesivir and how does that affect the treatment of these COVID-19 patients. So it's really, like I said, it's a blessing to be part of the Henry Ford healthcare system.
So do you want to talk a little bit about those studies? What have you been learning about remdesivir and what's going on with treatment surrounding that drug?
Yeah, so I think, our main hospital downtown, the Henry Ford Hospital, has been one of the clinical sites across the country that is part of that larger scale clinical trial to look at remdesivir and how does it improve or impact the treatment of those patients. So it's going to be a little while before we get all of the results. I think it would be premature to say, hey, we've seen it in X number of patients. Part of having a randomized controlled trial is actually taking the time to look at a large sample of patients to make sure that there aren't effects out there that people weren't expecting. I think you've seen that with some other drugs that have been talked about or potentially put out there for the treatment of COVID-19 that, once you start doing some of these trials, we kind of go, that doesn't seem like it works as well as we thought it might. And so we're trying to be, scientific, thoughtful, planned about how we go through those trials. The other one that I mentioned is the WIP-19 trial that is being done right now with hydroxychloroquine and seeing does it help our first responders prevent them from getting COVID-19. So that's a trial of about 3,000 individuals that are going to be taking place in that. And so again, as we work through that, we're hoping to see results and see whether that's a worthwhile preventative for first responders or not.
Yeah, well, it's good to see that study is going on because with all of these drugs, the media does what the media does, jumps to conclusions one way or another on the effectiveness of these drugs because that's the way we are. We want an answer immediately, right? Mm-hmm. And a story. So, it's good to hear. And that I love doing this show because I hear from people like you and we find out what is really going on. So both of those research projects are happening. We can be really happy to know, just to recap, that a big part of them is happening right here in our backyard with you at Henry Ford. And we don't know yet. We'll wait and see and get some real information. So
absolutely.
I appreciate the updates on that. Seems like testing is getting better, and we have more testing. And I know you've been doing testing there throughout. But we have a lot more facilities now where you can go get tested, and even watching the coverage of the opening of the auto plants yesterday, I saw that they're even doing some on-site testing. So, Eric Wallis, president of Henry Ford West Bloomfield Hospital, what can you tell us about where we're at with testing right now?
Yeah, I think we're partnered again very closely with the state of Michigan and the Michigan Health Department. I think there's various versions of it. So again, anybody who has symptoms, thinks that they've been exposed, there is the opportunity to get tested in a number of ways. The health system, we've really focused on having folks that if you're not feeling well, if you feel like you've been exposed, we want you to have a conversation with your healthcare provider to kind of have that initial screening and then get that, and they can send you to one of our testing locations. Our ambulatory sites have stood up kind of multiple places, whether it's over here in Bloomfield Township, our place over at the Columbus Center, are places where folks with a provider order can come and be tested. Certainly, if you're feeling very ill, we don't want you to wait. You're more than welcome. We want you to come to the emergency department here, and we can take you right in and get you evaluated and make sure that you're safe. And then, certainly with the local county, state health departments, there are places where you can go and be screened. And again, most of those, they want you to call ahead and have a conversation so that they know you're coming and make sure that it's appropriate to test you.
Yeah, and that seems to be consistent. But if you really need to get a test, you definitely can get it. That's the good news. And if you got a doctor, call your doctor. If you don't have a doctor, at least call. As you said, Eric Wallis, and you'll get your test. And I see that we're doing, both of the tests, a test for the antibodies and the test to see if you are currently infected. Eric Wallis, president of Henry Ford Hospital, West Bloomfield. I want to ask you about vaccines here, but I have to keep all of our radio stations legal, so we need to say that we are on the air in WAHS Auburn Hills, WBFH Bloomfield Hills, and WBLD Orchard Lake. The stock market goes crazy the last couple of days, yesterday in particular, on news that we may in fact have a vaccine. The national news yesterday said that the vaccine that we have is effectively producing antibodies. And I know you're not a doc, but you're the closest I got to a medical person today. But it's producing antibodies, and it is not having any detrimental impact on the very limited number of people. Are the docs around your building pretty excited about that?
Yeah, I think again, it's one of those things that we want to be cautious. There are a number of folks right now that are working on possible vaccines. I think what's really cool in the time that we live is that there's a lot of new technology, and so some of the traditional ways that vaccines have been developed are still out there, but there's also some really more genetic and molecular kind of things that are going on that have the potential to potentially move a vaccine along a little more quickly. But again, it's like anything else, and even the studies that we talked about. We really want to see more than just a very small scale trial. We really want to see larger scale testing of these things to make sure that they're safe. Always excited about the fact that we might be closer than we hoped, but we want to make sure that what we're giving to folks isn't going to cause them any harm either. And so I'll leave a lot of that to the FDA and others to figure out how quickly they can safely move through that process. But I think that they've got years and years and years of expertise in knowing when it's the right time to move to the next stage of testing, and when it's ready and able to be given out, we're going to be here and make sure that we're a trusted partner for the community and make sure that you can get the vaccine when it's available.
It's going to be fascinating, Eric Wallis, to see as these tests go on how quickly they can ramp up the vaccine and then how quickly we can manufacture. What a great test for our society and our technological skills right now to see how quickly this can happen. We're all excited. The stock market was excited. We're excited. We'll keep our fingers crossed, and hopefully the continued testing will move along. So, I know it's impolite, and I don't want to be impolite. But I was always taught it's impolite to ask somebody about money. But I can't resist. I'm just, we hear reports that hospitals are having a hard time right now because the elective surgeries that you depend on for your financial wherewithal you've not been able to implement. So in the interest of being, well, try not to be impolite, but how you doing?
Yeah, no, and I think it's a fair question, and you've seen a lot of stuff out in the news media. I think that our reality is, you're right. What we have struggled with is that based on the financial mechanisms of healthcare in our country today, a lot of our income is derived by elective procedures, and not having been able to do those now for going on 10 weeks has been a huge financial hardship. So in some respects, we've seen as much as 50-60% of our revenue disappear. And so it's something that we're working again very closely with the state and the governor's office to try to figure out when is it safe and appropriate to get back to allowing folks to have those procedures. Today, we are working through starting to bring back what we call time-sensitive things. And I appreciate that the governor's office, not too long ago clarified that the people that really should determine whether something needs to be done or not is the patient and their doctor. And so we have seen a return of some of those procedures that are more time sensitive, things that if people don't get them done, that could cause longer term harm. And so we are starting to ramp those back up. We're doing a lot of measures to keep people safe as they do come into the hospital. And so, for our new moms who are going to be delivering or patients who are coming in for some of those time-sensitive tests, we are screening those folks, testing those folks before they come in to have their procedure to make sure we kind of know their status and help them to feel safe in our environment.
Well, I appreciate your update, and I think people do feel safe. They just can't wait forever if they need a cancer therapy or they're having a baby. I mean, these things are going to happen, right? So,
yep.
Good to hear that you're able to keep the coronavirus in one wing and this in another wing, or however you're doing it. So thank you very much for that update. And again, people should feel safe coming to Henry Ford Hospital if they have to come with a non-coronavirus issue, correct?
Absolutely. And I would say even over the last couple of weeks, that if you come into our emergency department, 80 to 90% of the people come into our emergency department are coming for non-COVID reasons. And so it has, again, it's greatly declined within the community. And at this point, we've had a lot of experience on how to keep folks safe if they are here for a COVID reason. And we've got a lot of experience in how to keep people safe if they're coming for other reasons. So the one thing that we want to continue to hammer home is please do not wait. If you're having an issue, we're here, we're safe, and we want to take care of you. Unfortunately, and I think some of our EMS partners would tell you that we've seen way too many people who are having significant events at home because of their fear, and there's no reason to be afraid. We've got this, and we can keep you safe.
Eric Wallis, thank you very much. President, Henry Ford Hospital, West Bloomfield. Extend our thanks, our sincere thanks to all the amazing people in your building and everyone in your industry have been on the front line of this, at literally putting their lives at risk in this war against COVID-19. We appreciate it, and we need to have another one of those big parties in your parking lot, like we had not too long ago, and I'm sure the day will come. It will come. So thank you very much.
Absolutely, Dave. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say, happy EMS week to all of our EMS partners out there. If you get a chance, make sure you thank those guys. They're doing the hard work out in the field.
I didn't know it was EMS week. I appreciate you mentioning that. Tyler, happy EMS. We got to call all the EMS guys. And all right, very good. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it. Eric Wallis, he is the president of Henry Ford Hospital, West Bloomfield.